The black SUV squealed around the corner of the quiet suburban street, its tinted windows concealing cartel hitmen who thought they'd found easy prey. What they didn't know was that Michael Chen, the unassuming man in a plain suit watching over their target, had spent 15 years running CIA operations in the deadliest corners of South America. As the first gunman reached for his weapon, Chen allowed himself a small smile. After years of chess matches with cartels, some people still hadn't learned. The most dangerous predators don't advertise their presence. But before we jump back into the video, let us know where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe because I have something really special for you tomorrow. And now, back to the video. The black SUV squealed around the corner of the quiet suburban street, its tinted windows concealing cartel hitmen who thought they'd found easy prey. What they didn't know was that Michael Chen, the unassuming man in a plain suit watching over their target, had spent 15 years running CIA operations in the deadliest corners of South America. As the first gunman reached for his weapon, Chen allowed himself a small smile. After years of chess matches with cartels, some people still hadn't learned. The most dangerous predators don't advertise their presence. Time crystallized as Chen's mind calculated vectors and probabilities, just as it had countless times in Colombia and Peru. The SUV's trajectory, the likely weapon choices, the civilian variables, including the elderly couple walking their dog 50 yards down the street. His hand hadn't moved toward his concealed Glock. Not yet. Inside the modest ranch house behind him, Carlos Mendoza, former cartel accountant turned DEA informant, was preparing dinner with his teenage daughter, Sophia, blissfully unaware that death had just turned onto their street. Chen had insisted on no panic buttons, no obvious security measures. They had to appear vulnerable to draw out the real threat. 3 men in the SUV. Standard cartel hit team. The driver kept both hands visible on the wheel. Professional, experienced. The rear passengers were more eager, already reaching beneath their jackets. Amateurs. But it was the second vehicle that concerned Chen, a silver sedan hanging back 2 blocks, trying too hard to look innocent. Chen's earpiece crackled. "Michael, we have movement at the—" "I see it." He cut off his surveillance team. "Maintain distance. No engagement unless I give the signal." The SUV was 30 yards away now. Chen could see the gunman's finger tensing on the trigger. In exactly 4 seconds, they would open fire, expecting to cut down an easy target before grabbing Mendoza. They didn't know they were acting out a script Chen had written weeks ago when he'd first detected their surveillance. What happened next would shake the foundations of 3 cartels, expose a network of corrupt federal agents, and force Chen to confront the ghosts of a past mission that still haunted his dreams. But in this moment, as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across pristine suburban lawns, there was only the familiar clarity of imminent violence. Chen's smile widened slightly. Time to remind the predators why they should fear the dark. Chapter 2. Ghosts. 6 weeks earlier. Michael Chen stood in his Spartan apartment, staring at the photo he never displayed, but couldn't bring himself to burn. Anna smiled back at him from the crumpled image, her DEA jacket dusty from the Bogotá streets, dark hair catching the Colombian sun. The timestamp in the corner read, "06 Pash 17, 2018, 3 days before everything went wrong." His encrypted phone buzzed. "Package needs new handler. Previous protection compromised. Your expertise requested. Details follow." Chen's jaw tightened. He knew what compromise meant in this context. Another agent dead, another family shattered, just like Anna. The DEA file arrived in his secure inbox moments later. Carlos Mendoza, former cartel accountant, turned witness against the Ochoa organization. His testimony could dismantle 3 cartels and expose dozens of corrupt officials if he lived long enough to give it. But it was the second photo in the file that made Chen's hand freeze on the screen. A teenage girl with Anna's eyes, Anna's smile. Sophia Mendoza, Carlos's daughter, 16 years old. The same age Chen's goddaughter would have been if Anna had lived. "Not this time," he whispered to the empty room. The safe house in Virginia felt wrong the moment Chen walked in. Too exposed, too many blind spots. The DEA team had chosen it for its normalcy. A quiet suburban ranch house where a single father and his daughter could blend in. Chen saw only vulnerabilities. "Mr. Chen." Carlos Mendoza extended his hand, his accent softened by years in America. They tell me you're the best. Former CIA, Chen corrected, scanning the room's entry points. Now private contractor. And I'm not the best, I'm just still alive. Sophia watched from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. Chen recognized the look, the same wary hostility Anna's daughter had shown him at first. These kids grew up fast, learning to spot lies and danger before they learn to drive. You don't look like a bodyguard, Sophia said. Chen allowed himself a small smile. That's the point. He spent the next hour systematically dismantling the DEA's security setup. The panic buttons went first, too obvious, too easily compromised. The visible cameras came down. The guard rotation schedule was shredded. But how will we call for help? Carlos asked. They're watching, Chen explained. Every guard change, every camera, every routine. They're building a pattern. We need to look vulnerable. To draw them out, Sophia said quietly. Chen turned, surprised. She met his gaze steadily. Like using bait to catch bigger fish. Sophia, Carlos protested. You shouldn't think about such things. Why not? The cartels do. Her voice carried the edge Chen had heard too often in kids who grew up around violence. They killed Mom because she knew too much. Now they want to kill you because you know even more. Chen saw Carlos flinch. There was history there, guilt deeper than just an accountant who'd seen too much. He filed it away for later. No one's killing anyone, Chen said. But Sophia's right. We use their assumptions against them. They'll see a soft target, protected by predictable security measures. They'll think they have the advantage. And then? Carlos asked. Chen checked his watch. And then we remind them why predators should fear the dark. That night, Chen sat in his surveillance post, watching the Mendozas through thermal imaging as they slept. His earpiece crackled with routine check-ins from his hidden team, former operators he trusted with his life, positioned to look like random neighbors. His phone buzzed, a text from Sarah Mitchell, his old CIA handler. Chatter increasing, Ochoa's people moving money. They know where Mendoza is, Chen typed back. Good. Michael, Sarah's concern came through even in text. There's something else, some of the intel they have. It could only have come from inside the DEA, high level. Chen's mind flashed to Anna's last message. Something's wrong. The routes keep leaking. Someone's talking to... The message had cut off. 2 hours later, she and her husband were dead. Their daughter vanished into witness protection, leaving Chen with nothing but guilt and a photo he couldn't display. A sound from Sophia's room pulled him back to the present. The girl was having a nightmare, thrashing in her sheets. Through the thermal scope. Her fear radiated like heat signatures. Chen moved before he could stop himself, slipping into the house on silent feet. He found Sophia sitting up in bed, breathing hard. Bad dream? He asked from the doorway. She jumped, then relaxed slightly when she recognized him. How did you... It's my job to know. He stayed in the shadow of the doorframe. Want to talk? About it? Same dream as always. Men coming to kill Dad, like they killed Mum. She hugged her knees. She wasn't just caught in crossfire, was she? In Mexico City? Chen studied her face in the darkness. No, she was targeted. Because she knew something. Like Dad knows something now. Your father made mistakes, Chen said carefully. But he's trying to make them right. That takes courage. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. The other guards, they treated me like a kid, told me everything would be fine. She met his eyes. You don't do that. No point lying to someone who already knows the truth. Chen moved to leave, then paused. Try to sleep. Tomorrow we start your training. Training? Situational awareness, emergency protocols, things you should know. Dad won't like that. Your father wants to protect your innocence, Chen said. I want to protect your life. Sometimes those goals conflict. He left her with that thought, returning to his post. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Sarah. The last message read, Michael, it's worse than we thought. The corruption goes all the way to... The message cut off as a new alert popped up. Motion sensors triggered 2 blocks away. A black SUV moving slowly past the house, tinted windows hiding its occupants. First contact. Right on schedule. Chen smiled in the darkness as he sent a single text to his team. Showtime. The pieces were in motion now. The cartels, the corrupt agents, the ghosts of past failures, all circling closer, thinking they had found easy prey. But this time would be different. This time, Chen had written the script. And every predator that stepped into his kill zone would learn the same lesson. The most dangerous hunters are the ones you never see coming. Chapter 3. First Blood. The SUV was 20 yards away when Chen's earpiece crackled. Silver sedan, accelerating. A burst of gunfire from the second vehicle cut off the warning. Chen's surveillance team hadn't been as invisible as they thought. The elderly couple walking their dog dropped to the ground as bullets tore through. The evening air. Time compressed to razor-sharp instants. Chen's hand moved with liquid grace, the Glock appearing as if by magic. 2 shots through the SUV's front tire, 1 through the radiator. The vehicle swerved, buying precious seconds. Sophia, Protocol 3. Chen's voice carried through his concealed mic into the house. They'd practiced this daily. The girl would know what to do. The SUV's doors burst open, 3 gunmen emerging with military precision. Professional cartel soldiers, not street thugs. Chen noted their stance, their weapon handling. These men had training. "Federal agents!" a voice shouted from the silver sedan. "Drop your weapons!" Chen's blood went cold. He knew that voice. Special Agent Marcus Torres, DEA Tactical Team, the same unit that had been with Anna that day in Bogota. The pieces clicked together with terrible clarity. This wasn't just a cartel hit. This was a cleanup operation. Chen dove behind. A parked car as bullets stitched the air where he'd stood. Glass shattered. Someone screamed. In his earpiece, he heard Sophia's rapid breathing as she led her father to the panic room. Not the obvious one the DEA had installed, but the hidden one Chen had prepared. "Stay down," Chen shouted to the elderly couple. The old man was already moving, revealing the distinctive stance of former military as he shielded his wife. Not random civilians then. Chen's backup team, positioned perfectly. The old man, actually retired Delta operator Mike Reynolds, produced a compact submachine gun from his jacket. His wife already had their position covered with a sniper, rifle disguised in her walking cane. "Like old times, kid," Reynolds called out. "Getting slow in your old age," Chen replied, earning a bark of laughter that was swallowed by gunfire. The cartel hitmen were good, moving with coordinated precision, but they were focused on the obvious threats. They didn't see Chen's real trap until it was too late. Sophia's bedroom window exploded outward, the flashbang grenades she'd helped. Chen plant detonating in perfect sequence. The hitmen's night vision goggles, worn in preparation for entering the house, amplified the flash 100-fold. Chen was moving before the first man fell, his Glock barking twice. Clean hits, 2 down. The third hitman recovered faster than expected, spinning to face Chen with a modified automatic weapon. But before he could fire, a single shot from Reynolds' wife dropped him. "Federal agents!" Torres shouted again from behind the silver sedan. "This is an official—" "Save it, Marcus." Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "We both know you're not here on official business, just like in Bogota." A moment of deadly silence. "You don't know what you're talking about, Chen." Torres's voice had lost its official edge. "Mendoza's been playing everyone. The evidence he claims to have, it's all fabricated. We're here to prevent him from testifying about who really runs the cartels." Chen moved between cars, keeping Torres guessing about his position. About which DEA officials are on their payroll. About what really happened to Anna. A burst of automatic fire was Torres's answer, shredding the car Chen had just left. "You always were too smart for your own good," Torres called out. "That's why they pushed you out of the CIA. You couldn't just follow orders, could you? Had to ask questions." Chen's mind raced. Torres was stalling, which meant the sound of approaching helicopters confirmed his suspicion. More teams incoming. And in this neighborhood, they'd have to be official law enforcement. Torres was going to turn this into a legitimate operation, make it look like Chen and his team were the aggressors. "Last chance, Michael," Torres said. "Walk away, like you should have in Bogota." Chen's finger tightened on the trigger. 1 shot. That's all it would take to end this, to avenge Anna. But then Sophia and Carlos would have no one to testify for them. No one to expose the truth. "Chen!" Reynolds hissed. "Company coming. Lots of it." Chen made his decision. Sophia, execute Protocol 7, he spoke into his mic. In the house, hidden charges would be creating a smokescreen, covering their escape through the tunnels Chen had spent weeks preparing. This isn't over, Marcus. Chen's voice carried clearly. Tell your cartel friends they just made a big mistake. They should have killed me in Bogota when they had the chance. Funny, Torres replied. That's exactly what Anna said. The words hit Chen like physical blows. Anna's last moments. Torres had been there, but there was no time to process that revelation. The helicopters were almost on top of them. Chen fired twice more, keeping Torres pinned down while Reynolds and his wife disappeared into pre-planned escape routes. As Chen backed away, he heard Torres shouting into a radio, creating the official narrative. Shots fired! Officers under fire! Armed suspects attempting to kidnap a federal witness. Chen's last glimpse was of Torres standing up, playing the role of the heroic DEA agent, perfectly, just as he had in Bogota, just as he had when Anna died. In his earpiece, Sophia's voice was steady. We're clear. Following the exit plan. Good girl, Chen replied, already moving through the shadows. Remember what I taught you. Trust no one. What about you? Chen checked his weapon as police sirens joined the helicopter noise. I'll find you, I promise. The night swallowed him as official vehicles began arriving. Tomorrow, the news would report a failed kidnapping attempt, a heroic DEA response, business as usual. But Chen smiled in the darkness, because now he knew. The corrupt agents, the cartel connections, Anna's death. It was all connected. And Torres had just made a fatal mistake. He'd revealed himself too soon. Chen touched the photo in his jacket pocket. Anna's last smile. I know who killed you now, he whispered. And they're about to learn why some ghosts don't rest. The game was changing. The hunters were about to become the hunted. And Michael Chen was going to rewrite every rule in their book. Chapter 4. Aftermath. The safe house outside Baltimore looked abandoned, exactly as intended. Chen watched through thermal imaging as Sophia helped her father through the hidden entrance. Inside, Reynolds and his wife, Sarah Winters, former CIA wetworks specialist, were already setting up their equipment. Local news is running with Torres's story, Winters reported, monitoring multiple screens. Failed kidnapping attempt. Heroic DEA response. They're painting you as a rogue contractor who tried to steal their witness. Chen cleaned his weapon methodically, his movements precise. And the cartel gunman? Dead ones are listed as unknown. Assailants. The DEA's already making them disappear. Michael! Carlos's voice shook slightly. Those men, Torres, they were supposed to be protecting us. No! Chen's voice was steel. They were supposed to kill you, just like they killed Anna. Sophia's head snapped up. You knew her? The DEA agent from Mexico City? She was my partner. My friend. Chen finally met her eyes. And your father knows exactly why she died. Carlos seemed to collapse in on himself. I never meant. I didn't know they would. Dad? Sophia's voice carried years of questions. What is he talking about? Chapter 5. Buried Truths. Show her, Chen commanded. Show her what you've been hiding. Carlos pulled out a phone, not his official one, but a backup Chen hadn't known about. His fingers shook as he entered a complex password. 2 years ago, in Mexico City, Carlos began, I wasn't just the Ochoa cartel's accountant. I was building something bigger, a database. Every transaction, every bribe, every connection between the cartels and the DEA, Chen finished. That's what Anna discovered. She found your network. Sophia's eyes widened. Mom, she was investigating Dad. She was investigating everyone, Chen said. But she trusted the wrong people, told Torres what she'd found. Torres, Carlos spat the name. He came to me that night, said if I didn't help them trap Anna, they'd kill Sophia. I thought they'd just arrest her, discredit her. Investigation. I never imagined. Chen's hand tightened on his weapon. They executed her and her husband, made it look like cartel violence. And her daughter, Sophia asked quietly, vanished into witness protection, or so they said. Chen's voice carried old pain. I've been searching for her ever since. Carlos opened the phone's hidden files. Documents appeared, bank records, surveillance photos, recorded conversations. A web of corruption spreading through multiple agencies. This is what they're really after, Carlos said. Not just my testimony. This proves everything. Every corrupt agent, every cartel connection, going back 20 years. Chen studied the data, including who really ordered Anna's death. Michael. Reynolds' voice cut through the tension. We've got movement. Multiple vehicles approaching. From the south. Already? Chen checked his watch. They found us too fast. Unless... He spun, his gun aimed at Carlos's head. Where's your other phone? Carlos went pale. What? I don't... The one you used to contact Torres. The one you're still carrying, even though I told you to dump all electronics. Sophia backed away from her father, betrayal in her eyes. Dad! I had to! Carlos's voice cracked. They said they'd found her. Anna's daughter. Said they'd kill her if I didn't help them track us. Chen's finger tightened on the trigger. Anna's daughter is dead. They killed her 3 months after her parents. I found the grave. No, Carlos whispered. No, they showed me proof. She's alive. In a facility in Virginia. Torres sent me photos. Understanding hit Chen like a physical blow. Photos of a teenage girl, dark hair, Anna's eyes, Sophia's breath caught. That's how you described me. The pieces fell into place with terrible clarity. Torres hadn't just been tracking them. He'd been playing them all, using Sophia's resemblance to Anna's daughter to manipulate Carlos, and Carlos had fallen for it completely. Chapter 6. Hunters and Hunted. 3 vehicles, Winters reported. SWAT configuration. They're setting up a perimeter. Chen's mind raced. The building had 4 escape routes, but with Carlos compromised, they couldn't risk using any of them. Torres would have them all covered. Sophia, Chen's voice was urgent. Remember the contingency we discussed, the one your father doesn't know about. Her eyes widened slightly, but she gave no other sign. Good girl. Michael, Carlos pleaded. You don't understand. I had to protect her, just like you tried to protect Anna's daughter. Anna's daughter is dead because people like... You chose wrong, Chen's voice was ice. Because you thought you could play both sides. Outside, a bullhorn crackled. Torres's voice. Chen, we have you surrounded. Come out with Mendoza and no one else has to die today. They're pushing in from the south, Reynolds reported. Standard tactical approach. They think they know the building's layout. Chen allowed himself a small smile. But they don't know about the modifications we made, or about Sophia's special training. Training? Carlos looked at his daughter. What training? Sophia met his gaze coldly. The kind Mom never got. The kind that keeps you alive when everyone's trying to kill you. A flashbang crashed through the window, but Chen had already moved, his actions precise. Execute Protocol Omega, now. What happened next would change everything. The hunters were about to learn what it meant to be truly hunted, and Michael Chen was going to teach them all why some ghosts never rest. The night exploded into chaos. Chapter 7. Smoke and Mirrors. The flashbang detonated, but not where Torres's team expected. Chen had replaced all the windows with reinforced glass. The grenade bounced back, scattering the entry team. Sophia, now! Chen commanded. The teenage girl moved with practiced efficiency, hitting the sequence of hidden switches that triggered their countermeasures. Smoke began pouring from vents the tactical team didn't know existed, but this wasn't ordinary smoke. Gas masks! Torres's voice carried through the chaos. Too late. The specially formulated compound, a CIA recipe Chen had modified, was already taking effect. The tactical team's movements became sluggish, disoriented. You taught her this? Carlos watched his daughter in disbelief. All of it. I taught her to survive, Chen replied, leading them to the building's sub-basement. Something you should have taught her years ago. Reynolds and Winters were already setting charges, preparing their exit strategy, but Chen noticed Sophia staring at a phone she'd taken from one of their equipment bags. What is it? These photos Dad mentioned. She turned the screen toward him. I found them in Torres's cloud drive. Look at the metadata. Chen's blood froze. The pictures showing a girl who looked like Sophia, Allegedly Anna's daughter hadn't been taken in Virginia. They'd been taken in Bogota 2 weeks ago. That's impossible, Chen whispered. I found the grave. I saw the DNA results. Did you? Winters looked up from her explosives. Or did you see what Torres wanted you to see? Before Chen could respond, a new voice crackled over their comms, a voice that stopped his heart. Hello, Michael. Still trying to save everyone? Chen's hand shook as he keyed his radio. Anna. Chapter 8. The Dead Speak. Not exactly. The voice, so much like Anna's, carried a harder edge. But close. You never did find all the pieces of the puzzle, did you, Tio? Chen's mind raced. Tio. Uncle. The Spanish word hit him like a bullet. Marina. He could barely form the name. Anna's daughter. The one you thought was dead. Bitter laughter. Sorry to disappoint. But then, disappointment seems to run in our family. Sophia and Carlos watched Chen's face as the implications sank in. Marina was alive. And she was working with Torres. Why? Chen's voice cracked. Because you left me. Marina's composure shattered. After Mom died, you could have found me, could have saved me. Instead, you chased conspiracies and shadows. So Torres found me instead, gave me a new purpose. Marina, whatever he told you, he told me the truth. About how Mom really died. About your role in it all. A pause. About what really happened to Dad. Chen's grip tightened on his weapon. Torres is lying. I would never... Save it. Marina's voice turned cold again. You have 5 minutes before the building's surrounded by actual DEA tactical teams, not these rent-a-cops Torres brought. Come out with Mendoza, and maybe I'll tell you what really happened that day in Bogota. The comm went dead. Michael, Reynolds started. Not now. Chen's mind was already calculating options, but each one led to darker conclusions. Sophia stepped forward. She's lying. Has to be. The timing, the convenient revelation. No. Chen holstered his weapon. She's telling the truth. At least, about who she is. That bitterness, that pain. You can't fake that. So what do we do? Carlos asked. Chen looked at the scared accountant who'd betrayed them, at the daughter who'd grown too strong too fast, at his team waiting for orders. Everything had changed. Every assumption, every plan, every motivation, all twisted by this new reality. Michael, Winters warned, whatever you're thinking, Marina's right about one thing. Chen cut her off. I failed her, left her alone while I chased ghosts. He turned to Sophia. Execute Protocol Echo. Get your father to the fallback position. Sophia's eyes widened. But that protocol, that's for total breach, complete compromise. Chen checked his spare magazines. When everything burns, you run. No looking back. You're going out there? Reynolds stepped forward. That's suicide. No. Chen's voice carried absolute certainty. That's bait. Because now he understood. Marina wasn't just working with Torres. She was his insurance policy. His way of controlling the narrative. Which meant she had access to everything, including the real evidence about who killed her parents. Dad, Sophia said quietly. Go with them. Carlos blinked. What? No, I won't leave you. Yes, you will. She met his eyes. Because for once in my life, you're going to trust me instead of trying to protect me. Chen allowed himself a moment of pride before focusing on Reynolds and Winters. Get them out, through the tunnel network. Don't stop until you hit the safe house in Montreal. And you? Winters asked. Chen checked his watch. I'm going to give Torres exactly what he wants. Me and Marina, face to face. He managed a grim smile. After all, what better way to expose a lie than to let the liar tell it? The building trembled as new explosions started. The real DEA teams were getting closer. Time to go. Chen headed for the stairs. And Sophia, if this works, you'll know what really happened to your mother. All of it. And if it doesn't work, Chen thought of Anna's last smile, of Marina's pain, of all the ghosts that had led them here. Then you'll know anyway. Because some truths can only be written in blood. He stepped into the smoke, already planning how to turn Torres's trap into a noose. Because now the game wasn't just about survival or justice. It was about redemption. and Michael Chen was going to make damn sure everyone paid their debts in full. Chapter 9. Sins of the Father. Chen emerged from the building with his hands raised, smoke swirling around him. Tactical teams surrounded him instantly, weapons trained on his head. But he saw only one person, the young woman standing beside Torres, her face a haunting echo of Anna's. "Marina," his voice carried across the tense silence. She stepped forward, and Chen's heart twisted. 17 years old, but her eyes belonged to someone much older, someone who'd seen too much darkness too young. "You look surprised, Tio." Her smile was all edges. "Didn't think your ghost could come back to life. I looked for you." Chen kept his hands visible. "For months, the grave in Bogota was real." Marina's voice hardened. "They buried someone there. Just wasn't me." She glanced at Torres. Tell him what you did while he was chasing shadows." Torres stepped forward, his DEA tactical gear pristine, his smile professional. "We gave her a choice, Michael. The same choice we're giving you now. Help us clean up this mess, or watch more. People die. Like you cleaned up Anna?" Chen's fingers twitched. "Like you cleaned up her husband." "Dad died because he was weak," Marina spat. "Because he wouldn't do what needed to be done." Her hand moved to her own weapon. "Just like you." Chen's mind raced. Something was wrong. Marina's anger felt genuine, but her movements, her positioning, she was playing a role, running a script. "What did they tell you?" he asked softly. "What story did they use to turn you against everything your mother fought for?" "They told me the truth." Marina's voice cracked slightly, about the real corruption, about who really pulls the strings. She pulled out a phone. "Want to see? It's all here. Every piece of evidence Mum collected. Every name she was going to expose." Chen's blood ran cold. That phone. He recognized it. Anna's personal device, the one that had vanished after her death. And suddenly he understood. "You found it, didn't you?" he said quietly. "After they killed them. You went back to the house, found her phone, saw everything." Marina's mask slipped for just an instant. Terror flashed across her face. Torres moved instantly, but Chen was already talking. "That's why they didn't kill you. You had insurance, Anna's real evidence, the things she discovered about." A gunshot cracked across the standoff. Chen felt the bullet pass inches from his head. "Enough games," Torres barked. "Marina, show him." She pulled up a video on the phone. Chen's heart stopped as he saw Sofia and Carlos on the screen, tied up in what looked like a basement. "Taken 10 minutes ago," Torres said smoothly. "So let's try this again. You're going to help us close this case, permanently. Or we'll add 2 more bodies to the count." Chen's hands clenched. "They got away. I saw them. You saw what we wanted you to see." Torres smiled. "Did you really think we didn't know about your tunnel network, that we hadn't compromised your team?" But Chen wasn't listening anymore, because he'd spotted something in the video, something only someone who'd spent weeks training Sofia would notice. She wasn't afraid, she was waiting. Chapter 10, Judas Kiss. "Last chance, Michael." Torres pressed a tablet toward him. "Sign the confession. Take the fall for everything. The corrupt agents, the cartel connections, Anna's death, all of it. Do that, and they live." Chen looked at Marina, saw the slight tremor in her hand. "And what about her? What happens when she decides to share what's on that phone?" "That's not your concern anymore." "It was always my concern." Chen's voice dropped lower. "Ever since Anna called me that night, told me she'd discovered something bigger than cartels, something about a shadow organization inside the DEA itself, about experiments they were running on." "Don't!" Marina's shout carried real panic now. Too late. Torres's expression shifted microscopically. The game was changing. "Interesting theory," he said carefully. "Almost as interesting as your CIA black site in Montreal, the one where you're really sending Mendoza and his daughter." Chen's breath caught. Montreal had been a fake destination, spoken aloud deliberately in case of bugs. The real safe house was... "Your team's good," Torres continued, "but everyone talks eventually, even Sarah Winters." The name hit Chen like a physical blow. Winters, his most trusted operative, which meant... The tablet in Torres's hand flickered. Just for an instant, but Chen saw the signal. 3 quick flashes. Sophia's code. They were in position. You're right, Chen said quietly. Everyone talks eventually. That's what Anna discovered, isn't it? Your experimental interrogation program, the one you were testing on cartel subjects. He looked at Marina. The one you used on her. Marina's gun snapped up, aimed at Chen's head. Shut up! She was 17, Chen continued, his voice carrying across the tense scene. Just like you are now. They took her after killing your parents, told her they were training her to be an agent, but really they were… I said shut up! Marina's finger tightened on the trigger. Testing their new chemical interrogation protocols, Chen finished. Seeing how far they could push someone before they broke. Before they'd believe any story, any lie, as long as the pain stopped. Torres moved to intervene, but it was too late. The revelation hung in the air like smoke. Marina's hands started shaking. How did you… Because Anna found out, Chen said gently. That's what she discovered. Not just corrupt agents working with cartels, but a DEA black site program, experimenting on teenagers, creating perfect, deep cover assets through trauma and conditioning. Don't listen to him, Torres snapped. Remember your training. Remember what they did to you in that basement. The basement? Chen's eyes locked onto Marina's. Like the one where they're holding Sophia now? The same kind of basement where they held you? Marina's breathing quickened. The conditioning was cracking. Show her, Chen called out. Show her what real family does. The night exploded. Sophia's charges detonated simultaneously, catching Torres's team completely off guard. She'd planted them during their supposed capture, using every skill Chen had taught her. Reynolds' sniper fire cut down the tactical team's leadership before they could react. Carlos's hidden data servers activated, broadcasting everything, the interrogation programs, the corrupted agents, all of it, to every major news outlet. And in the chaos, Marina made her choice. Her gun swung toward Torres, even as tears streamed down her face. You made me forget, she whispered. Made me think I was working for justice. But Chen's right. My mother found out the truth. Found out what you really are. Torres laughed, a cold sound. And what am I, little girl? A monster, Marina said softly. One who's about to learn why you never try to control someone you've trained to kill. The night dissolved into gunfire and truth, as years of lies finally began to unravel. Chapter 11. Breaking point. The world exploded into controlled chaos. Torres moved with inhuman speed, knocking Marina's gun aside even as she pulled the trigger. The shot went wide, but it was enough to shatter the tension holding everything in place. Chen was already moving, his body responding to years of training. 2 quick shots dropped the nearest tactical officers before they could react. Behind him, Sophia's precisely placed charges continued detonating in sequence, creating a corridor of confusion through Torres's forces. Kill them all, Torres shouted, his mask of civility finally breaking. Initiate Protocol Black. The words triggered something in Marina. Her body went rigid, eyes glazing over as the conditioning kicked in. Chen watched in horror as she turned the gun back toward him, her movements mechanical. Marina, fight it, he called out, diving behind a burned-out car. Remember your mother. Remember what they did to you. Her hands shook violently. I can't… The protocols… A new sound cut through the gunfire, helicopters approaching fast. But these weren't police choppers. The matte black aircraft carried no markings. The cleanup crew, Torres laughed. Say goodbye to your evidence, Chen. By morning, none of this will have existed. But Chen was smiling. Check your phone. Torres's face changed as alerts began flooding in. Carlos's hidden servers hadn't just activated. They'd transmitted everything to every major news outlet, every law enforcement agency, every oversight committee. The DEA's secret program, the cartel connections, the experiments on teenagers, all of it now public. You think that matters? Torres pulled out a detonator. We own the narrative. Always have. By tomorrow, this will be a story about terrorists attacking federal agents, and you'll all be dead. Not all of us. Sophia's voice came from somewhere in the smoke. She'd moved exactly as Chen had trained her, becoming a ghost in the chaos. Marina's conditioning wavered as she heard the girl's voice, so similar to her own at that age. The basement, she whispered. The tests. They made me forget. Keep fighting it, Chen called out. You're stronger than their programming. Torres's laugh turned cruel. Are you sure about that? Show him, Marina. Show him what we really trained you for. Her body convulsed as hidden triggers activated. When she looked up, her eyes were empty of everything except killing intent. No! Chen's scream was lost in the sound of gunfire. Chapter 12. Sins and Shadows. The black helicopters were getting closer, their rotors churning the smoke into twisted patterns. Chen had seconds to make an impossible choice. Marina advanced on his position, her movements precise and lethal. The daughter of his best friend, transformed into a weapon by the very agency her mother had died trying to expose. Michael. Reynolds' voice crackled in his earpiece. Carlos's servers are confirmed. Data's gone worldwide. But we've got company. Multiple strike teams approaching from the east. Hold position, Chen ordered. Sophia. In place, she responded. But Dad's hit. Not bad, but he needs medical soon. Chen's mind raced. The pieces were all there, but the cost of putting them together. You never could see the bigger picture, Torres called out. Always too focused on saving individuals. That's why we won. Why we'll keep winning. Is that what you told Anna? Chen's voice carried across the battlefield. When she found out you were experimenting on children, creating programmed assassins. Marina's advance faltered slightly. Or did you just kill her before she could expose it all? Before she could save her daughter from becoming your puppet? Puppets? Torres laughed. We're creating the future. Perfect agents, programmed from childhood. No hesitation, no mercy, no troublesome morality to get in the way of necessary actions. Like murdering mothers in front of their children. Sophia's voice came from a new position. She was moving through the smoke like a ghost, just as Chen had taught her. Marina's head snapped toward the sound. The programming warred with recognition. Another girl, another victim, another reflection of herself. You remember, don't you? Chen pressed. Not just what they did to you, but what they made you do to others, other girls, other families, all part of the program. Stop! Marina's voice was barely a whisper. Show her, Chen commanded. Sophia, now! The smoke parted as Sophia emerged, holding up a phone. On its screen, security footage played. Marina, younger, being forced to hurt other test subjects. Training through trauma. Programming through pain. That's not... I never... Marina's gun wavered. But you did, Torres said coldly. And you'll do it again. Because that's what we made you. What we're making all of you into. Perfect weapons. The helicopters were almost on top of them now. Chen could see the black-clad figures preparing to fast rope down. In moments they'd all be dead. The evidence buried. The program protected. Unless... Marina, Chen's voice softened. Anna knew this might happen. She left something for you. Something they never found. Her eyes flickered. What? A kill switch. A way to break the conditioning. She hid it in plain sight, knowing someday you'd need it. Torres's face changed. He's lying. Trying to... Your mother's last words, Chen continued. The ones Torres thought were just a dying prayer. But they were for you. A key to unlock everything they buried in your mind. Marina's whole body trembled as suppressed memories fought to surface. Don't listen. Torres raised his own weapon. Remember your programming. Remember. Dios te salve, Maria, Chen said softly in Spanish. The prayer your mother taught you. The one she whispered every night. Marina gasped as neural pathways reconnected. Memories flooded back, not just of the programming, but of before, of love, of family, of truth. No! Torres lunged forward, but it was too late. Marina's eyes cleared. Really cleared, for the first time in years. And in them, Chen saw Anna's strength, Anna's courage, Anna's fury. Remember who you are, Chen said quietly. Remember what they took from you. And remember why your mother died trying to save you from becoming this. The helicopters touched down as Marina turned to face Torres, her weapon steady now. Behind her, Sophia moved to mirror her position. Two daughters of murdered mothers standing against the machinery that had tried to break them. The night was about to explode one final time. And this time, the truth would be written in blood. Chapter 13. Reckoning. The black-clad figures fast roped down from the helicopters, their movements precise and inhuman. Chen recognized their gear, not standard, tactical equipment, but something more advanced. The kind of technology that didn't officially exist. Your mother died trying to expose this. Torres gestured at his approaching elite team. The next generation of law enforcement. Perfectly programmed human weapons. No hesitation. No mercy. No conscience. Marina's gun remained steady, even as tears streaked her face. You didn't just kill her. You made me forget her. Made me believe. We made you better, Torres cut in. Stronger. Look at what you became. A slave, Sophia's voice carried through the smoke. Just like all the others they're creating. Like the ones coming down those ropes right now. Chen watched the tactical team's movements. Something was off about them. Their coordination was too perfect. Their movements too synchronized. Then he saw it. The slight metallic gleam at the base of their necks. Neural implants, he breathed. You're not just programming them psychologically, you're rewiring their brains. Torres smiled. The next phase. No more messy conditioning. No more broken subjects like Marina. Direct neural control. The perfect marriage of human adaptability and mechanical obedience. That's what Mom found. Marina's voice shook. Not just the psychological programming, but the experiments, the implants, the children you were taking. The future, Torres corrected. A future your mother was too weak to understand. But you, Marina, you showed such promise. Even broke through your first programming cycle. That's why we upgraded you. Chen's blood ran cold. What did you do to her? Torres pulled out a small device. Want to see? He pressed a button. Marina screamed, her body convulsing as hidden implants activated. Her gun clattered to the ground as she fell to her knees, fighting for control of her own mind. Stop! Chen moved to help her, but Torres's next words froze him in place. One more step, and I activate Sophia's implant too. The world seemed to stop. Sophia's not. Did you really think we'd let her live with Mendoza without insurance? Torres laughed. The basement where we held them, that was the surgery site. Ask her about the headaches she's been having. The gaps in her memory. Chen turned to Sophia, saw the horror of recognition on her face as her hand went to the base of her neck. The training sessions, she whispered. When I'd black out, you weren't just teaching me. We were upgrading you, Torres said simply. Both of you, the next generation of our program. Daughters of dead mothers, turned into the very weapons they died trying to prevent. Marina fought to speak through the pain. Why tell us this? Why not just activate us? Because he can't, Chen realized. The implants aren't fully integrated yet. They need consent. The subjects have to accept the programming. Torres's smile widened. Very good. The neural pathways have to be voluntarily opened. Once they are, the control is absolute. But that first acceptance, it has to be willing. And if we refuse? Sophia's voice was steel. Then you die, all of you, and we harvest the implants for the next subjects. Torres gestured at his tactical team. Plenty more children out there needing protection from the cartels. Chen's mind raced. The helicopter's downdraft was creating patterns in the smoke, revealing positions, showing. His eyes widened slightly. In the chaos, no one had noticed that Reynolds and his team had disappeared. And with them, last chance, Torres held up the control device. Accept your programming, or watch everyone you love die, starting with Chen. Marina looked at Chen, real tears mixing with blood on her face. I'm sorry. I can't. The pain. You can, Chen said quietly. Both of you can. Because your mothers gave you something stronger than their programming. Something they could never control. And what's that? Torres laughed. Chen smiled. A reason to die rather than become them. Everything happened at once. Carlos's servers activated their final protocol, broadcasting live footage of everything. Torres's confession, the neural implants, all of it, across every emergency broadcast system in the country. Reynolds' team opened fire from hidden positions, their specialized ammunition targeting the implants in the tactical team's necks. The supposedly perfect soldiers dropped like puppets with cut strings. And Sophia revealed what she'd been hiding. In the smoke. The real control device, stolen during their staged capture. Its circuitry modified, using skills Chen had secretly taught her. No! Torres lunged for his backup weapon. Marina screamed as she fought through the pain. Her mother's prayer giving her the strength to overcome the implant's control. Her gun came up just as Torres's did. 2 shots rang out. Torres staggered, looking down at the blood spreading across his chest. But he was smiling. "You still lose," he gasped. "The program. It's bigger than me. They'll never let it end. They don't have a choice anymore," Chen said quietly. Because now the world could see the truth. The live footage, the dying confessions of the corrupted agents, the evidence of experiments on children, all of it broadcasting across every channel, every platform, every screen in America. Marina stumbled to her feet, fighting through the implant's dying signals. "For my mother," she whispered. Sophia caught her before she fell, supporting her like a sister. "For all of them." The black helicopters were already retreating, their operators realizing the mission was compromised. In the distance, legitimate law enforcement sirens were approaching. Real DEA teams, FBI, everyone responding to the broadcasts. "Michael." Carlos's voice was weak but clear through the comms. "The final files, the ones Anna died protecting, they're all transmitting. Everything. The whole network." Chen knelt beside Torres's body, retrieving Anna's phone. The last piece of evidence. The final truth about a conspiracy that had destroyed so many lives. "It's over," he said softly. But Marina shook her head, tears still falling. "No, now we find the others. All the children they took. All the ones they tried to turn into weapons." She looked at Sophia. "We free them all." Chen watched the 2 girls, daughters of murdered mothers, survivors of unimaginable trauma, and saw in them the strength their mothers had died protecting. Not just the strength to survive, but the strength to remain human in the face of those who would turn them into monsters. The night was ending. Dawn was breaking over a changed world, and in its light, the truth would finally be written. Not in blood, but in justice. The war wasn't over, but the first battle had been won, and the daughters of the dead would make sure their mothers' sacrifices were not in vain. Chapter 14. Dawn's Light. 1 month later. The safe house in Montana looked nothing like a fortress, which was exactly the point. Chen watched from the porch as Marina and Sophia spared in the backyard, their movements precise but no longer mechanical. The neural implants had been successfully removed 2 weeks ago, leaving only small scars as physical reminders of their ordeal. "They're healing," Carlos said, joining Chen with 2 cups of coffee. His own wounds had healed clean. "Both of them." Chen nodded, noting how the girls moved like sisters now, watching each other's backs even in practice. "They're stronger than anyone gave them credit for, just like their mothers." His phone buzzed, another update from Sarah Mitchell at the CIA. The fallout from their revelations continued to shake the foundations of multiple agencies. 47 corrupted officials arrested so far. 300 million in cartel assets frozen. And most importantly, 17 other programmed teenagers located and rescued. But it wasn't over. They all knew there were more out there. More children taken, more secret programs, more facilities hidden in the shadows. "The congressional hearings start next week," Carlos said quietly. "They want all of us to testify. Are you ready for that?" Carlos watched his daughter execute a perfect defensive move, one that Marina had taught her. "I'm done hiding. Done trying to protect her by keeping her in the dark." He managed a sad smile. "Anna tried to warn me about that, you know. Said the truth protects better than lies ever could." Chen touched the photo in his pocket, Anna's last smile, but now it was paired with a new photo. Marina and Sophia, arms around each other, survivors becoming warriors. "Michael!" Marina called out from the yard. "Come see what we figured out." He joined them as they demonstrated a new combination of moves. Marina's trained precision blended with Sophia's innovative adaptations, a perfect synthesis of their different backgrounds, creating something stronger. "Mum would have loved this," Marina said softly, "teaching others to fight back, to stay human." "She does love it," Sophia corrected. "Through us." Chen's phone buzzed again. A message from Reynolds. 3 more facilities located. When you're ready." He looked at the girls, no, the young women, who had survived the unsurvivable, who had turned programming into power, trauma into strength, to, "There's more work to do," he said simply. They both nodded, understanding immediately, because they had all learned the hardest lesson, that sometimes the only way to honor the dead was to keep fighting for the living. "We'll need a team," Marina said. "We are a team," Sophia replied. "Family by choice, the strongest kind." Chen watched the sun rise over the Montana mountains, casting long shadows that no longer held any terror, because now they were the ones moving in shadows, hunting the hunters, freeing the imprisoned. "Anna once told me," he said quietly, "that the greatest weapon against darkness isn't more darkness. It's bringing things into the light." Marina touched the small scar on her neck. "Then let's light up all their shadows." They stood together, the ex-CIA operative, the former cartel accountant, and two daughters of murdered mothers who had refused to become the weapons their enemies had intended. The war wasn't over, but now they had something their enemies could never program, never control, never understand. A family forged in fire, bound by choice, and dedicated to ensuring no other child would suffer in darkness. Dawn was breaking, and with it came not just hope, but purpose. The real mission was just beginning. Chapter 15. Into Light. The congressional hearing room hummed with tension. News cameras lined the walls, broadcasting live across the nation. Chen sat in the front row as Marina approached the podium, her head held high. "My name is Marina Ruiz," she began, her voice steady. "5 years ago, they murdered my mother when she discovered their program. Then they took me, tried to turn me into everything she died fighting against." She paused, letting the words land. But they made one mistake. They thought programming could overcome love. They were wrong. The chamber was silent as she detailed the horrors, the experiments, the conditioning, the neural implants, but more importantly, she spoke of resistance, of humanity, of the strength that no programming could erase. Sophia testified next, Carlos beside her, sharing their part of the story. Chen watched the faces of the committee members as the full picture emerged, not just of corruption, but of an attempt to create an army of programmed children, hidden within the very agencies meant to protect them. But it was Chen's testimony that brought it all together. "Ana Ruiz discovered this program," he said, placing her photo on the display screen. "She was a DEA agent who believed in justice. When she found out what they were doing to children, she gathered evidence. Evidence that would expose not just corrupt agents working with cartels, but a systematic attempt to create programmed assassins from the children of their victims." He looked directly into the cameras. "They killed her for that truth, but they couldn't kill what she stood for, what she taught her daughter, what all these survivors carry within them." The evidence was undeniable. Carlos's servers had released everything: the classified files, the medical records, the training footage. The world could no longer look away. But Chen wasn't finished. "This hearing isn't the end," he continued. "It's a beginning, because there are more facilities, more children being programmed, more families being destroyed." He gestured to Marina and Sophia. "But now there are also people who know how to find them, how to free them, how to help them reclaim their humanity." Marina stepped forward again, Sophia beside her. They didn't need to speak. Their presence, strong, unbroken, human, said everything. As they left the hearing, reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, but Chen saw something more important. Faces in the crowd. Other survivors. Other families. People reaching out, ready to join the fight. Later, at Anna's grave, they gathered in a smaller ceremony. Marina placed fresh flowers beside the headstone. "She would be proud," Chen said softly, "of all of you." "She is proud," Marina replied. "I feel it every time we save another child. Every time we bring another facility into the light." Sophia touched the small scar on her neck. Not a mark of victimhood now, but a badge of survival. "What do we do next?" Chen pulled out his phone, showing a map with glowing points of interest. 3 more facilities identified. Dozens of potential victims. A network of corrupt officials, still trying to hide in the shadows. "Then we hunt them," Marina said simply. "All of them." They stood together as the sun set, casting long shadows across the cemetery. But shadows held no fear for them now, because they had learned the most important lesson. The greatest weapon against darkness isn't more darkness. It's bringing things into light. Mum always said, Marina touched the headstone one last time, that true justice isn't about revenge. It's about making sure no one else suffers what you suffered. Then let's make her proud, Sophia said. All of them proud. They walked away from the grave together. The ex-CIA operative, the program daughter, the girl who refused to break, the accountant who chose truth over safety. A family forged in fire, bound by choice, dedicated to a mission larger than themselves. Behind them, the last light caught Anna's headstone, illuminating the new inscription they'd added. Her truth lives on in those who choose to fight darkness with light. The war continued, but now the hunters had become the hunted. And in every shadow where they tried to hide their crimes, they would find those they had tried and failed to break, bringing justice one light at a time. Some predators advertise their presence, but the most dangerous ones, they strike from within the light itself, the end.